Okay, we are recording right now, so.
Okay. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Get a roll call.
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Johnson,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Hayes,
Here.
and we have Alan and Craig also here today.
And Dan Johnston is here also.
Oh, Dan's here, and so is Mark.
Yep. So is Pam.
Thank you. So is Pam Barely.
All right. Can I get a motion for the agenda approval?
Mr. Chairman, I motion we approve the agenda as written.
Okay. Can I get a second?
This is Cheryl. I'll second it.
All right. We'll do a roll call. Ms. Brum,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that passes. How about prior meeting minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the prior meeting minutes as written.
This is
Okay,
Cheryl.
second
I
on
will
that.
second that. I'll second.
Do another roll call. Ms. Brum,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Financial report. Mark, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, you got Gary's input there on things that jumped out at him. Everything was in pretty good shape. Obviously, there was no natural gas bill in this month, so that's not reflective of where we're going to be. The one thing he was concerned about was the purchase power. And I know when me and Kurt set the budget, we really tried to be pretty tight on where we thought we would be. And one of the issues we had with both engines, the top end of the engines had to be rebuilt. So those engines were down for some time. So I think that's kind of reflective in why we're trending a little bit high there. Hopefully that'll come back around. And then of course, it's not a surprise, but the SRF engineering, we decided to self-fund that up front. And then if we go forward with the project, the replacement fund is where we're I think Gary was planning on taking the money from. We'll true all that up and get reimbursed through the loan. Is there any questions on any of the other aspects of it?
Has any part of the stopping of the destruction of the power plant out at the island been reflected in the trucked wastewater?
No, what we get trucked wastewater from We Energies is the leachate from their landfills.
Okay.
There's nothing there that is coming into the plant that I'm aware of.
Now, my understanding was they shut it down because there was particulate matter in the air that was
when they
getting
started
on the snow. And
when they started tearing into the bag house there,
yeah,
I heard there was dust that was emanating from it, and the Eagle shut them down.
I was wondering if that generated dust on the snow had to be trucked in too.
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't think Eagle required anything like that. That's Eagle's show.
Okay.
And I think it's shut down now until they get a fugitive dust control plan in place before they can restart. I did get approached by a company that's going to be working at BLP's power plant, taking that down. Before they take it down, they plan to go in there and wash everything down. And then all that water is going to get collected and they want to send it down to the treatment plant. So we ran some analyticals on it and it looks good. I don't see it being a problem. So we will be approving their permit when they do start that process.
Wow.
Do they have an estimate of how many gallons that's going to be, Mark?
They were looking at 40 to 60,000 gallons a day. Based on the analyticals, we could take up to 540,000 gallons a day and not have any impact on our
Are they
effluent.
Are they?
Go ahead,
are they
Harold.
discharging into the sewer system?
Yep, that's what they're planning. They're gonna have two 20,000 gallon frac tanks. They'll go in there, hose everything down, collect it all, go into the frac tanks. And then there's some sort of filtration system that goes through. And then it would go into this sanitary sewer system.
Okay.
But yeah, the analyticals would be really good on it.
Are they going to measure the flow just through metering the water coming into the building or something?
Well, normally that's up to us. We could require a meter, but these tanks have lines on them. And they're basically, actually, they're 21,000 gallon tanks. So their idea is to fill it up to the line and then empty it.
So
I
they'll
said that would
empty
be
it
good
in one
enough.
continuous,
Right.
then they'll fill back up again.
Yep. That's the plan.
And where are they gonna empty that?
They, right over at the plant itself, they'll go to the nearest sanitary sewer and
Okay,
it'll just flow right into that by gravity down to the plant. As part of that whole permit process, we have the power to go in there, inspect it, require them to take more samples, or shut them down. We could shut them down at any time
okay.
if we notice.
So
any
it's not
sort
gonna
of-
run through a couple different lift stations. They're gonna truck it down to the. plant.
Nope.
Okay.
No, they're not even gonna truck it. It's from that point, it's just gravity down to the plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're lucky there. We Energies, they dump at their current plant. There's a spot there that they dump at. Goes through their oil water separator, and then that does go through several lift stations before it gets down to the plant.
Okay.
And with
I
them
was
taking
actually-
that plant down, they're looking to get a contractor to haul it either to the down, all the way down to the treatment plant here, or I'm looking at some other options of maybe having them dump it at one of our lift stations, maybe Pine Street, because I kind of like to get it blended in before it gets to the treatment plant.
Okay.
But we'll see on that. That's going to be a ways away.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the financials?
You said last month that the labor costs would be going up because you filled those two positions. Has that happened?
Well, it did for a week. And then the city went ahead and we were taking part in the furlough system.
Ooh,
It was voluntary, but everybody here except the two new employees, they were not allowed to partake in it, are furloughing. On top of that, we're taking one of our operators and we're having him getting, it's training for him, but also at the same time, he's out down at the water treatment plant, so we could have some employees there furlough. So at this point, it's saving the plant, I think roughly $2,000 a week, just with the staff here at the plant,
wow.
this furlough system, so. And the
How
employee
much-
gets an extra day off
How much longer will the furlough system last?
until the,
March 14th.
yeah, March 14th is when the unemployment thing ends. If that
Okay.
gets extended, the city might extend it, I don't know. But as of right
Okay.
now, it's March 14th.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Is that it on financials?
That's it.
All right. Let's move on to the solids handling project presentation.
And we had Craig Heisel from Donahue here. He's the project manager, and Alan Williams is the lead designer, engineer for the project. We've been meeting with them weekly. We've been talking to you about this monthly. And as you know, this all started with us not having enough storage capacity for biosolids. From there, with the JCI project and our cogen units, we started looking at leveraging those units and also trying to bring revenue in. There's a need for septage here in the area. So we looked at adding a septage receiving station and kind of came up with a project plan. As we got into more detailed engineering, we ran into some hurdles, but we've kind of come into the end line here, the finish line. And I'm going to have Craig and Alan kind of go through the whole project, why we did it, how things changed, what we did to handle those things, and where we are right now.
And
So I can
Mark,
turn it over to Craig.
and if they want to
Yep, sorry.
if they want to share their screen, they should be able to.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. So here, I'll share my screen with you. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
And Mark, I'm not sure if you shared this with others in the group, but so this is, I think we just tried to put together an agenda to cover, kind of multiple parts of the project and just give a bit of an overview. There's some, kind of more detailed information in here. And then we'll kind of end with on the revenue side, and then on the, excuse me, on the capital cost side. And then we'll end with a schedule. And, definitely appreciate if your time today. And if you have some questions, we can try to work through those now, or we can set some things aside. And if it's going to take too long to get through it in this meeting, and try to resolve your questions there. But, definitely looking for some interaction and discussion, and if things fall out of list, then that's is okay with us. Does that all sound okay?
Yep, and I did
So I
not
think-
share this with them. I didn't get it until later yesterday. And I can email this out to all the board members.
Great.
This meeting.
And again, it's like 4 or 5 pages. Just try to cover some high points. And then there's some tables in here that kind of summarize some of the costs, and all this, is hopefully for the most part familiar with everyone, but it's good to kind of cover that ground again. Just for and then I'll try to be as brief as I can here, but definitely we can dig in the details if we think that has value. So just something I've been on the project. Oh, sorry.
Oh, one thing, can you clean up that screen there? Take those little bullets away?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Kind of confuses.
That's a little distracting.
That's better.
Thanks. So just a little bit on the project status. We've developed kind of what we're called preliminary design, includes site layout, process instrument diagrams, and then kind of layout for all the buildings and things like that, and electrical single lines. And then those documents have been submitted to Eagle as part of the SRF project plan schedule. So now we're kind of, and that also includes kind of bid specifications associated with. So now we're transitioning into what we call detailed design. So that's just more kind of details with the processes, with the buildings and things like that. So we're hopeful we're at a point now where the layout's pretty firm. And then we just work on iterations of the details. And again, I'm not sure if Mark shared that with the group, those draft plans, but they're definitely available. And we're available to work through any kind of discussions on that. And we appreciate Mark and Dan and others' time as we've been working through this process, because it really is iterative. And then I'll go through the schedule as kind of the last point, but just wanted to talk about that up front. This next table, if everybody can see it okay, is just a little bit on some of the benefits of the project. We've been refining this a little bit. I don't think it hasn't really changed from some of the judgments and assumptions that we made initially on. I know Harold has been digging into this, and we appreciate that as well. Maybe what I'll do is just touch on a couple high kind of main points, I'll call it. So, and then these columns here are, what we're calling kind of current operation, historic operation. And that was mostly based on information that we worked through with Mark and Kurt maybe a couple of years ago. Not sure if that's changed a little bit. And then these columns here are, kind of with these improvements and goals. So there was a concept of transitioning from, liquid, which is 1 million gallons maybe before, and then cake disposal, and then processing fee associated with that. Here you can see, our goal is to process less liquid and then more cake. And if you look at the cost, there really isn't a lot of cost savings here. I think this is mostly around trying to manage the risks that Mark and his team has there with, biosolid storage, and kind of things associated with that. And then just a couple more things on the tipping fee. I think the Mark confirmed the tipping fee with Ishpeming, 14 cents a gallon. We have a target of around 1 million gallons. We think the market is, quite a bit greater than that, maybe 2.5 million gallons. I think Ishpeming processed about 2 million gallons last year. So, maybe that's a little bit conservative, but that's the number that we've carried. And I guess just maybe one step back, part of the goal with this was to better utilize some of your existing assets, like your digester capacity and things like that. Your digesters, relatively speaking, are underloaded relative to a design. Maybe they're at 30 or 40 pounds of volatile solids per 1,000 cubic feet. And, depending on what we add to them, they could pretty easily run at 80 or 100 pounds of volatile solids per 1,000 cubic feet. So there's some capacity there. There's capacity in your generators to utilize that digester gas. And the septage will support that. And then, I think there's some concept for fats, oils, and greases utilization. That would be preferable from a digester utilization and gas production standpoint. But we've kind of taken just a minimal approach to that, maybe with the hope that market will grow in the future. And then part of our design around this system is to be able to manage the fog. So, in our tanks, we have heating, mixing. We try to place the structure closer to the digester gallery to minimize that piping, and things like that, just to support that opportunity for the future, even though I think we're taking kind of a minimal credit for that for now. And then the rest of it is around some ferric chloride, which we didn't have any value on, and then electricity production, and then heat created from the combined heat and power process. So it all kind of comes down to this $180,000 a year, which is the same number we've had previously was carried in SRF. Does that seem okay, or are there any questions for that?
Have you done any kind of O&M analysis for this project? In other words, when the project's completed, what kind of O&M costs we're going to see at this facility?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. So cake processing, we tried to account for that. I think we had about $50 a dry ton for cake processing, polymer.
I'm actually I'm interested in the fog and the septage side of it. In other words, the solids processing, I understand all that. We require it, but the septage and the fog is something we're requesting in addition to the solids handling. So
yeah.
Do you have that broken out separately, or is there a way to do that?
Well, so I think from a labor perspective, I don't think we anticipate any increases in labor. We tried to account for the additional solids production as a part of that process in the disposal fees and then the cake processing fees. And so other than that, we really haven't accounted for I'll say additional costs. The equipment ought to have a 20-year useful life. I think it's pretty, we've spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure that it's kind of robust and reliable and is going to meet our needs.
One of the things that just came up last month was that there's going to be some, you're looking at heating the fog vessel, whatever the vessel is that's going to contain the fog is going to be heated. You're going to provide heat for that or something?
Yeah, we're going to heat the tanks. And so that the concept for that is to take the heat out of the plant heating loop. So we think that'll have kind of a minimal effect on the total heat. And then I think there's available heat just for running the two engines anyway.
Okay. Are you gonna have waste heat at all? I mean, is that you're gonna have so much heat you generate, you're gonna have a waste heat, or is that all gonna be captured through heating a digester?
Well,
the engines themselves have the ability that if the water gets too hot, that they can waste heat off the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we've seen that though.
Okay.
I think that just the load from the generator or the digesters alone have been enough to keep us in a good range.
Craig, one of the things that is going to happen is this the rate that we're going to receive let's say the septage is going to vary by season, I assume, right? In other words, in the winter, you're not going to get any. And in sometime in the summer and the spring, you're going to start loading, and they'll continue into the fall. Do you know what kind of months we're talking about? And you know what I'm saying? We're going to take this, we're saying 1 million gallons, but that's going to be spread over a whole year. Well, really, it's only like maybe 6 months. Is that, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about?
I think,
Yeah.
as far as
a mass balance.
as far as instrument goes, they see it early spring all the way through until winter.
Okay.
And I think they get an occasional load here or there. I actually did see a septic truck driving through Marquette yesterday.
Okay.
So I think there's an
but-
occasions where they do go out.
But in general,
But yeah, most of it's going to be in the summer, Harold.
probably 90% or so, I would guess.
Yeah, spread over 6-7 months. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Mark, maybe you've talked to these haulers, right?
Yes, I have.
Could maybe just find out what they see as far as their schedule, as far as hauling. Where's
Yeah,
their?
I'll look into that some more. Yep, I can get that. We can talk about that after this presentation too.
Okay.
I wanted to touch base on, what I've found out there.
Okay, sure. That's all I have.
Yeah, thanks for those questions, Harold. Those are all, really good. And I think there definitely is some load leveling there. But again, I think the system will be set up to support that, that kind of load leveling, let's say.
Okay.
So one thing I don't know if there's much value in going through every single line item here, but we just want to touch on a few things that, we're really focused on cost. And, trying to look at ways to, I'll use the term value engineering to, manage the cost, but still not sacrifice the integrity of the project. So, we've around the waste receiving facility, we've looked at different ways sizes of the facility, different ways to kind of mix and heat and pump the facility and things like that. So, we're trying to optimize the size of it, yet still provide enough volume to do some of this load leveling, maybe more on a daily or weekly basis, but, to be able to manage receiving those loads. And then again, being able to heat it, while still controlling the costs. And then around the dewatering and cake storage, we looked at some different options there with like a tower press versus kind of your more traditional press and some trade-offs with that. The polymer aging, I think the decision was made to not incorporate that into the system, kind of like they're doing now. And then some trade-offs with that, the building materials, the types of buildings, and then the size of the cake structure, looking at a structure kind of similar to the size that you have now, but then having a bit alternate for maybe a little bigger structure, and then allowing the city and board to make decisions on that at bid time. And then, kind of a big issue they came up with the locations of the buildings and things like that, just trying to manage those locations that best suit the project, but also, try to address some of the costs. And then around the site, again, I think that originally there was a concept for putting the septage receiving and the dewatering kind of next to each other. And there would be some efficiencies associated with that, like one mechanical room, one electrical room, maybe shared MCC. And then I think as we got into the project more, it just seemed, more reasonable to separate the facilities, put the septage receiving closer to the digester gallery, and then have kind of the dewatering facility over there by the sheriff's building. And so I think that led to some kind of inefficiencies in layouts that I think that are necessary for the integrity of the project. But, and then there's also a number of, bid alternates and things like that were incorporated into the project that we could talk about in a little more detail in the next table. So I'll stop there. I don't know if anybody wants to, if we have any specific questions about this. And again, that's been kind of weekly discussions with Dan and Mark and others in our kind of design team on how to, make this economical.
I have a question. We have some equipment that we've been told that every time it needs to turn on, we take a hit from the BLP in terms of the power requirements. Is there something in this building of equipment that's gonna cause that to be routine, or is this equipment not gonna require that much power to come on and off?
Yeah,
I can answer
it's
that.
all pretty, oh, sorry, okay.
Oh, well, the demand charge happens anytime. One of the concerns BLP had is they have to have the infrastructure to be able to supply us with the electricity we need when those engines go down. And they were thinking that those engines might run 2, 3, 4 months without ever going down. And then they would have to have this equipment there and they wouldn't be able to, recoup any costs for that. But what's happened is those engines go down frequently. And every time they do, we have that immediate need for that electricity. So we've been getting that demand charge and we're going to continue to get it moving forward. And yeah, this project is going to obviously be some more electrical costs, but it's not going to affect that at all.
Okay.
It's all pretty small horsepower. There's small pumps. The receiving system is small horsepower. The dewatering system is small horsepower. We looked at like centrifuges or things like that just as an alternative, and I think for several reasons we ended up back with the belt filter presses. But all I think should contribute pretty minorly to a demand component.
One question on what's the you've evaluated the solids production, in other words, the potential solids production concentration from our biosolids. In other words, right now we're getting what, 13% solids when we're running it through a dewatering?
Yeah.
The cake itself. Is this going to improve this concentration of the solids with the new system?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of things, so initially, and through the project, we've been looking at these trade-offs. We understand that 13% is pretty low, but it's not atypical of a biological nutrient phosphorus removal, biological phosphorus removal facility, and some of the issues kind of associated with that. So we looked at alternative dewatering technologies, and I think we ended up with a belt filter press for several reasons. One of the things that I think we've decided on is this tower press. It's like a 3-belt system with a separate gravity zone, and I think in general, Alpha Laval makes one, and BDP, they have a little better dewatered solids concentrations. It may be 1 or 2% greater. So we think that'll have some value that really isn't incorporated into the cost, just from hauling the volume of sludge and then also stacking in that facility. And then the other thing that we're incorporating, at least for now, is a ferric chloride system. And I think that'll help maybe manage some of your hydrogen sulfide in your digester gas. And then we found at other systems that kind of the way that ties up phosphorus in a digester leads to maybe a little higher cake solids as well. So I think those two components, we're definitely hoping for a little better solids.
What are you using for a design number?
Well, I think that, Alan, I think we're using 15%, I think.
Okay. So it's a reasonable number that we're going to try to shoot for, I guess, because that does reduce the cost for disposal.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable number, but again, this BioP dewatering a sludge is pretty challenging, and I think that Mark's seen that. And then another thing we're trying to do is, even though we have a 1.5 meter belt, we're trying to set up Mark's production schedule so he can, feed at a lower rate a little, more often and still keep it within 8 hours a day. And I generally that kind of a little bit lower loading rate to the presses helps with the cake solids as well. But we think 15 is a reasonable number.
Does that seem reasonable to you, Mark?
Yeah, I haven't seen the tower press and I haven't talked to operators that have run them yet, but from what I've read and stuff, you can get a little bit better cake, maybe 1-2% better. And then also the ferric feed, we're finding plants like Craig said with BioP, that by adding ferric to the digester and binding up that the phosphorus helps, maybe add another 1 or 2%. So we're really kind of shooting low here and hoping for that we're going to see a little bit better percentage there. And just to touch on the ferric, that is like a triple effect we're looking at. One, we're going to add it and hopefully we're going to get a little bit better cake. Two, and this is huge for us from a maintenance standpoint, by knocking that H2S down, we won't have to change the media and the gas conditioning skid for H2S. Right now we're having to change it every 2 to 3 months. And that's, I think it's $4,000 plus a change. And it's disruptive for us because we have to get the Vactor down here. And obviously the Vactor can't go out when it's below 0. And then we have to rent a lift truck to lift up the bags to dump the media into the vessel. So by knocking that H2S down, if we can have that media last, 4 to 5 months, would be a huge help for us. Plus on the filtrate coming off the press, the phosphorus should be less, so it shouldn't be as much of a load on the plant. For a relatively low investment, in my opinion.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So great questions. And then again, we're definitely available to go through this, in more whatever detail we would need to. So this kind of last table we have here, this summarizes a lot of the things that we've already sorry about that, the things we've walked through, but this is in terms of costs. So we just wanted to take a little time and go through this and make sure everyone understands, I think, where we're at with the project. So, the initial construction cost was this $4.9 million. And then included into that initial estimate for SRF was, the construction cost. There's a design fee component, services during construction component, and then there's a system integration component. Those right now, we're still have the same estimates in there for that. And then as the project's evolved, a couple of things that have became an issue for us, I'll call it, are these pile foundations. So, right now we have an estimate in there for that. We're, definitely GEI did the soil borings and is doing the geotech on us. They're pretty familiar with your site there. So we're looking at, helical piles, but we're also looking at alternatives to try and manage those costs a little bit better. We're hopeful that that's kind of a worst case condition for now, and we'll be able to do better on that. But in working with Eagle, we just think that we're better off, updating this SRF loans if that has value to the city, kind of for these worst case conditions. And then, hopefully we're going to do a little better. The site improvements, we talked a little bit about that. This is really around separating these facilities and then, then all the things that are going on now between these two facilities to try and make the system work for the city. And then maybe make things a little bit better. There's that kind of internet post that's out in the middle of by the sheriff's building that we're going to try to get rid of. We're end up paving that whole area around there, and then trying to make the septic receiving, kind of a nice facility for the septage drivers to come in and offload their product at, and and want to use the city system versus some of these other ones. So those are kind of two major costs, that have added to the project. Again, these are just estimates. Right now we're carrying a 15% contingency where we're at with the design. And then there's a few of these alternatives right now that we want to break out and then get costs on, and then allow the city and the board to make decisions, at bid time on these. One is this, we're looking at a couple septic receiving systems. I think Mark in general favors the Huber, but there's a cost associated with that. This cake storage facility touched on that. Maybe breaking that out as an additional cost and making a decision at bid time on that. Right now, there's only one belt filter feed press for the belt filter press, and that's really a redundancy and reliability issue, because if that doesn't work, you're not getting solids out. That's definitely an issue for compliance. A service water pump, looking at the service water, this would be a redundant pump that would provide some value. with the additional surface water we're using. The ferric we talked about with Mark, we think there's a lot of value. There's a cost estimate for that. And then this filtrate equalization, right now the plant manually raises and lowers a submersible pump. If we put in kind of a level controlled centrifugal pump in there, we should be able to equalize that ammonia load and phosphorus load back to the plant over 24 hours instead of the way that they're doing it now. I'll stop there. I know that was quite a bit I just went over.
I'd just like to touch on the alternates, as the estimate came in and we were looking at cutting costs and trying to get the numbers down. All the alternates listed there are things that we think we should have. Maybe some of these things we could live without. The belt filter press, the feed pump, the second one. Yeah, we can get by with it, but if it fails, we're in hot water. The service pump for the water system for the plant, we can get by with what we have, but if we lose one of the pumps, then we're really going to have some problems operating the plant with just one until we get that second one fixed. So we kind of looked at it. These are things we want. We want the ability to get them, go out and get the pricing, see where the budget comes in, and go from there.
Mark, are you talking about the FEW system?
Yes, as part of the JCI project, 2 of the pumps were replaced. And with the additional loading of the system, we can get by with the 2 pumps. But if we lose one of those pumps, then obviously we're going to have to, on a daily basis, make a decision on how we operate the plant. Maybe we're running the belt filter press. We might not be able to do something else with the water, that sort of thing.
Is there pipe capacity to get it from the FEW pumps back to where you want it? I mean, do you have to increase that or
no?
Or?
Donahue, Alan can probably answer that better, but they did look at that, and there is a piping replacement that we were going to have in the project, but we decided we're going to do it in-house instead.
Okay.
Alan, do you want to touch base on that?
Yeah, there's so the system is fed with a 6-inch pipe out of that FEW building. When it gets into the main plant, it reduces down to 3-inch, which is too small for the additional loads.
It's a loop, right?
Yeah, there's a loop. So just until it gets to the loop, Mark and the city are going to replace that 3-inch with 6-inch pipe and add a couple more filters themselves. Then the loop, which is really an effective way to distribute service water, there's no issues with that. We do need to boost the pressure at the septage station to wash the screen, but we'll just do that with its own booster pump. So.
Okay.
Yep.
How hard is it to add these alternates later on, a couple years or whatever down the road?
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted these alternatives. Yeah, we could do it down the road for sure, but it's going to be more of a cost then. We're going to get the cost savings of having a contractor on site with all their equipment working here already. And to add these things now, I think we're going to get a better bid, obviously, to do that work.
Sure, I understand that part of it. I'm just thinking if we can't afford it now, how hard would it be to add later? Secondly, that I had on that, are these alternates in order that you'd like to see? So is that Huber station of your first priority, or is that not prioritized?
It's not prioritized, but if I had to prioritize it, I would say I kind of would like to see the larger cake storage #1 and the septage station second. And the reason for that is right now in the base bid, we're going to have the storage area is going to be basically the size that we have currently. And if we're going to go ahead and have this better tower press, we're going to fill that area up before winter's over. And that'll be fine. We can get by and we can use it back here, but we're not going to have the efficiency of that new press. I asked Donahue to say, what if we make it a little bit bigger? How much is that going to cost? And if we're going to go ahead and maybe size that thing bigger in the future, the cost is going to be much more than $150,000. So I just wanted that option. As far as the septage receiving station, one of the things we wanted was this thing to be as user-friendly and operator-friendly as possible. So we really went out and looked at the equipment, the pre-treatment equipment. And there's really two vendors that supply the equipment that are pretty good. And we have a long history with Huber from our step screen. It's been in operation for nearly 20 years, I believe. And it's still going strong. So, we kind of have an affinity for that. And then just looking at the two pieces of equipment, it just seems to be a better design, in our opinion. I'm hoping to go down to Wisconsin next month and tour some facilities that have this different pieces of equipment that we're looking at, and talking to the operators, seeing it in operation, and getting their input. But we wanted the options here to be able to do that. And at the same time, to give the board options to, if the bids come in and they're higher than we're comfortable with, we can delay this stuff and do it later.
I would just get that.
Obviously not the
Talk
receiving station, but
Right. Between you and Dan, come up with a list and prioritize those alternates, and in case we do get to that point, so you guys have an idea what you want and what you'd be willing to cut first.
well, just looking at it right off the top of my head, look, number one would be the ferric. It's not that expensive, and we're going to get a big return on our investment there. So that would be my number one alternate. 2 would be the larger cake storage. 3 would be the septage station, the Huber screen. And then probably it would be the feed pump with the final one, the service water pump.
Okay.
Those last 3 were, you could just pick whatever one you want. They're all about the same.
Okay.
There's not one that we truly need more than the others, but.
Well, hopefully we can take care of it all in one shot, but just be ready if we can't,
Mark.
Oh, absolutely.
Mark, did you, there was talk about including that oxygenating system for the chlorine contact tank? Is that?
Yeah, that's another aspect that we've been talking about for a long time. Out of the scope of this project, as we looked at it and we're going to go forward with the project again, you're going to have a contractor here with all this equipment. It made sense to kind of look at the other deficiencies we have at the plant and tackle that with our replacement fund. So the biggest problem we have as far as violations go, every spring we have DO violations because of the river coming up. The only way around that is an engineered fix. And we've come up with the simplest plan we can to take care of that problem. And that would be a post aeration system. That's in here. Our fire alarm system is not operating at all right now. As part of code, the 2 new buildings are going to be required to have a fire alarm system. And this is such a huge investment in the community and the 2 townships, that we really felt that we should obviously have a system up and running. And it's quite expensive, but something we need. So we've added that we're going to have as part of the bids. The electrical room work, that's our electrical room where the HVAC unit failed. I got a couple quotes for different units to replace it. And they were anywhere from, one unit was $30,000 before they even sent it out to get it coated. The second unit, I think, was like $60,000. And so I asked Donahue, is there a better way that we can tackle that with this project? So what we're looking to do is just put an electric heater in that room. It doesn't need a lot of heat. The current air handling unit still operates. The air conditioning will still work. Just the heating vessel part of it is destroyed. So we're going to continue to operate that until the air conditioning fails. And when that fails, we would, look at maybe getting a local contractor to put in like one of those Mitsubishi cooling units. The Vector pad, from the day we put that into operation, we've had all kinds of problems with it. It has a lift station that's connected to it that pumps everything off of there and everything off of our liquid storage, biosolid storage tanks back to the head of the plant. And now we're looking at routing the filtrate coming off the new solids building into this lift station. So we had some serious concerns on, keeping that in operation. So we're looking at redesigning that so we have less sand getting into that lift station. And we're going to do some miscellaneous improvements as far as the piping goes on that too. But so those are all things that were not part of the project plan, but we feel we need them. And it's the best time to go ahead and tackle these issues would be when we have a contractor here doing the work anyways.
I agree.
Thanks, Mark. So, we can go through these costs more. I think the big takeaway is that, we've discussed with Eagle, increasing the loan amount 1.3 million to account for some of these additional costs. Again, we hope that that's conservative. Right now, we're carrying a 15% contingency, but we thought that would just put us in a better position for these low interest loans. And then there's the kind of the costs then associated with that. And then the estimated revenue was incorporated into this line item here. And then, again, the calculated impact to the users. Okay,
I want to touch on that. What we had here was for Mike. We met with Mike yesterday. So the actual, 404,800 minus the 180, I believe it's $224,800 would be our estimated bond payment. Now the city is going to pay 84% of that. So that's 189. The 189 divided by the number of customers would come out to an increase of $30 a year and $2.50 per month. As far as the township goes, Marquette Township's share of that bond payment would be $20,000, roughly $20,232, and Chocolate's would be $15,736 is what I came up with. I'm not sure how many users you have, Brad, but that would be the impact of this project.
Okay.
If the estimated revenue is at that amount.
Okay.
So, and then this last table here, Mark just talked to those post aeration, fire alarms, and then this Vector pad. I think originally we had a separate lift station, and we tried to, as part of controlling costs, wanted to reuse that existing lift station. And then part of that, I think, is to do some improvements to that Vector pad in order to manage some of the sand that gets into that pump station. So there's some costs associated with that here.
What kind of improvements are you contemplating? I mean, what can you do to make it better?
Well, we have some details on it, but right now,
Okay.
that drain is in the middle, and they took out kind of all the filter material, and then the Vector waste has to pass over that drain, because it's right in the middle of the pad. So I think we're contemplating kind of leveling that pad out, and then putting modifying the back of it to convey the water over to the side, and then have a perforated plastic pipe for them to better be able to manage kind of the sand and things like that. So I know it's a little hard to explain, but we have some details on it and some pictures of some places that we've done it in the past that, it's definitely not going to be perfect, but it'd be way better than pushing, the Vector waste across the drain, every time they want to move it. So.
Yep.
But for sure, we're open to any, better ideas there, because, it's a challenging service for sure. So
we sat down with the whole staff and tried to, brainstorm the best solution to this. We had a lot of ideas, but at the end of the day, I think this was the best. We all concluded that this was something that we think will work. Certainly a lot better than what we have now, because what we have now, it just doesn't work.
Right.
And it creates a lot of operational problems for us.
Are there other plants that handle this waste, Mark? I mean, there's other places.
Yeah. I've seen, I guess, a few. Most of them have taken old drying beds, which we used to do in the past when we were spoiled.
Yep.
We had these old drying beds we weren't using anymore, and they were fantastic because they were really big and long. Obviously, in order to replace that, it would be really expensive. But, you know, the way this was designed, it made sense. But unfortunately, the filter material that keeps the sand out of the pipe that gets into the lift station, it just wouldn't drain.
Right.
So, you know, we slowly started to peel some of those filtering materials out. We finally found we just had to take it all out completely, or the thing was getting used so much,
Yeah.
you know, it
Plugs
would just
up.
get full. Oh, yeah. And then all that material is getting into that lift station, wearing the pumps out, plugging the line, all kinds of headaches.
I'm real curious to see what the improvements would be on that. So, anyways,
We have the drawings. I thought I shared them at the last meeting, but
I
I'll
haven't
send
seen.
those out to the board too.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we going to get a copy of this report in the PDF file?
I just sent it out. Yes, it should be in your email.
Oh, okay.
This handout that Craig's going through, I just sent you that out.
So thanks. So, Mark, I have to drop off about 10, but I think Alan maybe can stick around a little bit if there's more questions. But the last point we just wanted to talk through was the schedule. So, you know, I know there's a lot of kind of dates on here. We've submitted the draft documents to Eagle. And then right now we're working with Eagle on this rate methodology. And then, you know, we've asked them about this opportunity for increasing the loan amount. They seem amenable to that. So I think, you know, we wanted to go through this obviously with the board first, but then I think our next step is to get Eagle that, if it's acceptable. And then we'll keep working through the schedule. I know Mark and Gary and others have started working on the part 1 applications. And then we're looking at the bids around May time, and then loan closing around July, August. And then notice to proceed maybe September, October or so. So we could get you a more detailed schedule if that would be helpful, but that's kind of the time frame that we're working in. Sorry, it's a little hard to read.
Yeah, so we're looking at, you know, bids coming back. When was it? June 28th. So we're waiting to hear from Eagle. Once we hear from them, we're probably going to hold some sort of work session for the city commission. And if we get the board approval, we get the city commission approval, and we get the okay from Eagle, then we'll start moving forward like Craig said. And it should all come together in July. We'll see what the bids come back at, and then we'll have to make some decisions. Any more questions for Craig before he has to jump off? Any questions for Alan? Or any more questions from the board on the project, or are we good for now?
I think we're good for now.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely appreciate your time, you know, and especially Dan and Mark's time, you know, kind of as we're working through this. So, you know, we're always available to talk through it. You know, if we want to get into details, that's okay with us, because in the end, we'll just end up with a better project. So.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
See you guys later. All right, we can move on to operations report. Dan, you still with us?
Yes, I'm still awake too.
All right, good for you.
All right, it's gonna be a tough act to follow, but let's see. Sorry about that. All right, permit compliance for the month. No permit violations have occurred since the last meeting. We continue to operate under the city's COVID-19 plan. We're following the safety protocols put in place. We're still gathering weekly samples of our plant influent and solids from various stages of the treatment process for Michigan Tech. NMU's treatment program is once again defunded until further notice. So our last samples we provided for them were last week. And if they find more funding, they'll let us know. Let's see, cogen number 2 had to have its cylinder heads replaced a couple weeks ago. And we expected this at its current age. And we actually got an extra 2,000 hours of operation out of it before it had to be done. So that was pretty good. Maximized our service life on that repair. They also repaired a coolant leak on the other unit and an oil leak on the number 2 unit. And the cold snap we had last week caused some pipes to freeze in one of our boiler rooms. We took care of that problem. That boiler's back up and running again. So it serves as a standby unit in case if we have one cogen unit not running and the other one running, it's not enough heat to keep the digesters warm. So we definitely need that standby boiler available to take up the slack. But we're back in at full strength now. And industrial wastewater acceptance for December. Well, that should say January, sorry. 90,500 gallons from Wisconsin Electric for a total of $2,715. Fabric Cat gave us 4,100 gallons for $533. And LS&I, we got 7,200 gallons for $936 for a total of $4,184. And maintenance management, not a whole lot to add on that other than I added our 2 new employees to our Lucity program. And we're going to start breaking them in on that system. And we replaced another seal on one of our other boiler booster pumps a couple weeks ago. So trying to get up to speed with our maintenance, and that's about it.
Can I ask one question about the cogen units?
Sure.
Are these worth it? It seems like you have a lot of problems with them.
You see by the look on Mark's face.
You know, Brad, if you look at the amount of electricity they save and you minus the maintenance costs and the media cost and the natural gas cost, we are saving money with them. Yes.
Are you?
But that doesn't take into account the whole bond payment. You know, that's a tough one to answer. The bond payment was not just for the cogen units, it's for everything they did down here. And then there's this whole cost avoidance that goes into it. But I can show you on the budget how much these engines save us a year for sure.
Okay. So it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, top of my head, the engines save us roughly around $180,000 a year in electricity costs. Then you got to get into the heat part of it. You know, I guess that part actually offsets the natural gas. But so then there's the increased cost of natural gas. I think that was like 40-some thousand. And then we budget another 70,000 for maintenance and media. So there is a net savings for sure.
Okay.
I can see in the budget. But
all right.
Mark, you guys keep track of your natural gas and electrical bills and all that stuff. So can we get copies of that for like the last 5 years just to see what the difference is between what it was and what we are doing
how
now?
long was the last one? Yeah, the packet, we had in the last packet last month. We had the bills in there.
Yeah, we only had a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have that. Last month, you know, we did add, or I think Pam sent out as part of the packet, you know, I don't know if it was the last 5 months of bills. But yeah, there's a graph that Pam's been tracking. I don't know if it goes back 5 years, Harold.
Whatever,
But,
right? But you guys have historical records. If you have to, you could get them if you need to.
Absolutely.
And I've been really cleaning them up. So, you know, within a week, you know, by early next week, we can ship all of that out to you, like in its own, you know, informational packet without the agenda too, if you'd like.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll get it together and send it out to the board.
I would like to do is just sit down and look at all the costs that we've had with the engines and what the savings are. So that should be reflective in our natural gas bill and our electrical bill, right? I mean, really what we're
Yes.
trying to do is reduce natural gas and use our digester gas to make up the difference.
Right, that's part of this project, why we added the septage part.
Right.
Right now we're producing enough enough methane basically to run one engine all the time. And then when they did the project plan for these engines, they knew we didn't have enough biogas to run both engines all the time. They thought we would be able to run the second engine sometime. And we've had a few times where we had enough biogas to run that second engine on biogas, but it wasn't for very long. So most of the time that second engine is running, and that was all supposed to be part of the, they were taking that into account with their guarantee.
So do you take into account the additional stress and extra work on the staff that they have to put into these units, I mean, into the, with the utilities that we are saving potentially?
When they first started up these engines were redesigned and they were the first ones in the US for craft. So there was a steep learning curve for staff and actually craft service people. But I think we've worked through them. And I think it's more frustration for Dan, as far as the actual operators. I don't think it's that much of a headache. We are transitioning to looking at starting to do some more of the maintenance ourselves. Initially, we were just having craft do it. And there are several reasons why: special equipment, training, and that sort of stuff. But we have some pretty talented folks that work for us. And as we've gotten more experience with these engines, we're going to look at, at a minimum, doing the monthly service calls ourselves. So there'll be some savings there because we won't have to pay for them to come up all the way from Gaylord to service the engine. But yeah, they're expensive pieces of equipment to operate. They're engines that are running 24/7.
We knew that coming.
Every hour those engines are down, we're not making money. We're not saving money, I should say.
Right.
So
they're not trying to stir a pot or anything. It just seems like there's constant
I understand
issues with them.
There's a lot of maintenance with them. Yeah. I mean, not so much every day we're out there tinkering with them. It's more the engines run fine, they run fine, and then suddenly they start running rough or failing, alarming. And then there are a lot of the times we have to have craft come up and, it turns out something needs to be replaced. The engine needs to be rebuilt, the top end. Sometimes it's just a simple glitch. There's a lot of controls, monitors on these things, pretty sophisticated. It's not just a simple engine spinning a generator. There's the whole heat aspect of it. But I think it's going relatively well. For the most part, we produce 200 kW of electricity on a moment's notice, and most of the time our plant is using anywhere from maybe 180 or maybe a little bit more, 190 kilowatts to 250. So we're saving a lot of electricity for sure.
Okay. There's a lot of software and stuff that goes into them, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
You asked some very valid questions, Brad. I mean, trust me, we've asked the questions many times ourselves. Is it worth it? But like Mark said, when they're running, I mean, it's a no-brainer. There are bugs and stuff we're still working through, but for the most part, they make sense. It's just sometimes they're very, very troublesome. But we've gone through all the troubles. So,
how old are these now?
And it's not all just the engines. There's the relay that we're required to have to protect the BLP system, and then also to protect our own the engines themselves from having a spike on the BLP end. That relay is so sensitive that if there's any sort of power glitch, the tree branch hits a line out somewhere in this south of Marquette, that'll kick those engines off in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. So, and then vice versa, if the engines have some sort of spike that we've seen, that relay will close to protect the BLP system. So that's caused us some issues. And it was a real trying time early because craft was working their way through some of these issues. The manufacturer is in Czechoslovakia. So a lot of the times craft would be here and they would log on with their laptop into the PLC of the engine or the cogen units. and they would be online with the engineer over in Czechoslovakia. But come 11 o'clock, it was the end of his day and he wanted to go drink a few pints and go for the day. So they were highly upset with that. And eventually the engineer was forced to stick around until the problems were fixed. And they've worked themselves through those problems. You know, and we've gotten a lot better at recognizing problems and getting ahead of the game, I think. But like Dan said, there's still things that come up that we haven't seen before, and we deal with them as we go.
How old are they now? 3 or 4 years?
2 years,
We've had them up and running for,
almost 2 years now.
yeah, almost 2 years.
You're,
When we first started them up would be in the springtime here. And then they were up and then they were down and then they were up and down and.
what was
and
the
they were,
official
continuous
start date?
operation, I think we're late summer.
What's the official start date
Okay.
when they did their annual, I guess, evaluation, their first year? What was that?
Well, when the warranty started, I'd
Yeah,
have to dig that up, Harold, but I think that was sometime in,
August sticks in my head for some reason.
a year and a half
well, I
ago.
want to say when they first started these engines up, it was April or May, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we had a lot of problems and Kraft was up
Right,
here.
but there was, at some point, there was a time when the, I guess the clock started, when, you know, supposedly there's going to be a 1 year of annual operation.
Well,
at
there
their-
was there was a Johnson Control date in there, but then there was the warranty on the engines themselves, and I think they were different. Is what I recall. I'd have to dig
Okay.
into that.
I guess,
don't
when
remember
did
off the
we
top of my-
officially start operating the engines as opposed to just testing and we're getting them running? You know what I'm saying?
Like Dan said, I think we're, late spring, early summer is when we were trying to get them up and keep them running continuously. We had a lot of problems doing that, like I said, and that's when we might have them up and running for a week. And then suddenly they just wouldn't run, or they were running so rough, we had to shut them down. Most of the time when they start running rough or having an issue, the PLC and all the controls on the unit will detect that and shut the unit down. So we're getting all these different codes and alarms. And like I said, Kraft, the service people here, were dealing with it for their first time. So there was a lot of back and forth with Czechoslovakia.
And
Like I
also,
said,
Mark, if
But
you recall the pipe.
go ahead.
We had with their biogas supply piping, that took a long time to get resolved. It took a while before people acknowledged that was an actual issue.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess
there was an issue getting it.
is at some point, I mean, how do we evaluate whether these are effective or not? Because we've got to have a start date and say, okay, from here we're gonna calculate, and this is going to be the they're all up and running, they're 100%, and here's where we start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the city supplied, JCI is supposed to supply the city with a report every year on the guarantee and how much money they saved. And that report has been done, but I don't know if it's been released yet. I think the commission has seen it. I can talk to the city manager about releasing that, and I can share that with the board.
This is that document we're paying $100,000 a year for.
This is the guarantee. Yeah, the city.
So this is their annual.
I only have one small slice of the whole JCI project. The whole JCI encompassed the whole city. So I was always focused on what we were doing down here at the treatment plant. Kurt was a little bit more involved because it was a water treatment plant also.
I guess I'm only interested in what's happening at the plant, so I don't really care what's happening.
Right, exactly.
So do we have, do you keep track of O&M costs for the engines? I mean, for JCI to do this.
We have a separate, we have a separate line item for all the maintenance
Can we get copies
on the
of that?
engines.
That information?
Yeah, well, it's a line item in our budget. You can see it, Gary's report.
Okay.
Let's see. If you look at 590, 527, 801,
What page?
and then there's another number, 50219.
What page
Professional
we on?
contractual,
What page you on?
JCI maintenance cost.
JCI maintenance. What page is that?
It's on the second page. Well, it'd be actually the third page of Gary's report.
Okay,
He
so
had his first comments. So that's what we budget for as far as maintenance, the units. You know, basically well, I think Dan, I think every 1,200 hours now, we have the engine serviced. And that might include changing the oil. These
Sure.
things take an incredible amount of oil.
Right.
Just going through the engine, maybe changing the spark plugs, that sort of thing.
but you,
And then also the media involved for the skid unit. We had budgeted $70,000 for that. And currently we've spent, I'm losing sight here.
It's hard to go close to 70 grand. We have 47 available. So
We spent $22,794 so far of that. It looks like, right? Am I reading that right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's $47,000 left. We're at
Mark, I don't know where you-
32%.
Mark, where are you? I don't know
Yep.
where you are. What line item
we're
are you
in
talking about?
Okay, if you look at expenditures,
Expenditures, okay.
this is where, you know, he has the other revenues and all that stuff. Go down and there's one account that really sticks out. There's 5 digits after.
Yes.
It's an 801 account.
Yep.
Professional contractual JCI maintenance costs. That's how we track the maintenance on these engines.
Okay.
Now, having said that, when we set the budget last year, we were not expecting the top end of the engines to have to be rebuilt. Kraft had told me that they had conveyed to Kurt that that was going to be we were going to hit those hours where you would expect to have to rebuild these engines, the top end of the cylinder heads. And Kurt doesn't remember, you know, and I believe Kurt, obviously, but for whatever reason, that was missed. So we didn't have that in the budget. And I had to go to the board and ask for approval to use replacement funds to go ahead and do those repairs. And then also the city commission. So moving forward, whatever we expect, you know, we know how much these engines are running. And when they hit certain levels, they're going to need to be rebuilt. At one point, they're going to need to be completely torn down and completely gone through. And that's going to be an expensive bill, but that was all part of, you know, the savings from these engines are supposed to pay for all that. And so far they are.
So your estimate for maintenance cost was $70,000 a year. That was your budget.
And that was based off of the year prior to that, what we spent on media. And, you know, and that's, we're getting back to that, adding the ferric chloride.
Does this include your
We spend
labor
a lot of
costs?
money on media. What's that, Harold?
Does this include labor costs? Everything associated with the operation maintenance of the engines, I guess, is what, or is that?
The media changeouts would not include our maintenance costs, no, or employee cost. The maintenance on the engines themselves, that does include the employee cost because we're paying a contractor to do that.
There is a way, Harold, if you don't mind me, we could, I don't know how Mark feels about this, but there is a way to, if we wanted to attach that same job number that you see there attached to the 801 account, you know, we could track their labor if that's something Mark thought we could do. It's very possible.
Well,
Yeah, if it's a simple accounting thing, we can do that.
to do a real economic analysis, we need to look at what were our costs before we did this project, which is basically the power and the natural gas requirements. And now we've got natural gas and power requirements, but we also got the maintenance, we've got the replacement of media, whatever goes on with the engines. And that should all be somehow summarized. Somehow we need to know all those numbers. So otherwise we never can do an economic analysis.
As far as the engines go, employee time spent on them is the operator daily going through a checklist. That's, you know,
I guess,
pretty
but
much
I
it.
don't, Mark, I don't really need to know all
there's
that.
a
All I want is, bottom line is, is there a way to track all those numbers and come up with a number of what the engines actually cost us to operate in an annual cost?
Yeah, we can attempt to do that. You know, it's kind of hard with the engines because it's hit or miss.
Yeah, but
you know, if we get an alarm, you know,
when somebody
if
works on the
we have
engine, when somebody works
Yeah,
on the engine,
if
you
we have
have
an employee here on a Saturday, he's gonna be here anyways. If that engine trips out.
Yep.
And he's gotta take 15 minutes of his time to go and get it reset.
Mhm.
You know, I don't really see that as being a true cost to
Okay.
maintain that engine.
All right.
Now, obviously, if we're going in there and if we start doing the services ourselves, and we have an employee spending 3 or 4 hours changing the oil and doing all that stuff, that would be a operation and maintenance cost. But that's going to be a savings for us because we're not paying the contractor to do it. Right
Well,
now, the biggest employee cost, O&M cost, I think are in relation to the media. When we change that media out, we basically have 2 employees that go up and they have to take the cover off. We have to pay for the vector to come down here and that employee to run that vector. It only takes 10 minutes to vac the material out. And then we also have to pay a lift truck. We have Fraco come down with one of their block trucks. I think they charge us like $100 because this is a big 2,000 pound super sack of activated carbon. And then that was the cheapest cost we could find to have that picked up and then dumped into the, then the employee opens it up and all that stuff goes into the vessel and then they have to reseal it.
So you're keeping.
And then there's some other, yeah, we can certainly do that, Harold. We haven't been doing that, but we will.
So you don't.
And that's a really easy one for us to do. And then moving forward, if we spend time actually working on the gas conditioning skid or the engines themselves, we can ask the employees to start putting that time down on their time slips. And then Pam can assign a number to that and track it. That should be relatively easy to do.
So right now you're not.
You're
not tracking that information.
We are not right now, but we're not really spending a lot of time doing that.
Okay.
I guess is what I'm saying. The media change outs on the H2S system, are 2 to 3 months we're changing it out. So I could give you a kind of a ballpark figure on that. The other media lasted a year. So that one's a little bit more involved because there's 2 vessels. So it takes a little bit more time. And then as far as the gas conditioning skid, the only true maintenance on it, other than draining, checking for moisture, I think, is greasing the blower motor, which is like every 500 hours. It's not a tremendous amount of time.
All right, should we move on? I didn't mean to start something there. I apologize.
No, that's okay. It's a good conversation.
There you go, Brad.
I know, right? All right.
I wanted to touch on that Septage report Harold had asked. I was able to get the report from the state, from Eagle. And the 2020 report, the haulers aren't required to submit it until March 15th. So I won't have that. Hopefully the next meeting I can get that information. But based on 2019 for septage in Marquette County, there was 2.4, just shy of 2.5 million gallons. And you can see where it went. You got Stenberg Brothers out of Bark River, 906,000 gallons. They hauled it all over the place from Ishpeming to KI to Munising and even down to Hannahville. They have their treatment plant. Hamel, all of theirs went to Ishpeming. Bob Septic went to Ishpeming and KI. ER Disposable, which is also Stenberg Brothers up here, had 480,000 gallons that went to Munising, KI, and Ishpeming. And then Sodagrin, also known as Cleary, everything they hauled, they went to Ishpeming. Out of that 2.5 million gallons, Ishpeming that year took in about 1 million gallons of septage. So the rest of it was hauled out elsewhere. And as soon as I get the latest report, I will report to you. Now, obviously, KI Sawyer is not taking it anymore. So I did talk to Ishpeming, and this past year, they took in 2 million gallons of septage. So I think I don't have a long history of how much septage has been hauled, but if we're averaging 2.5 million gallons, Ishpeming seems to think that there was even more hauled this past year, but we'll see how that comes out. We're going to have the same fee schedule as Ishpeming as far as disposal of this material. It's going to be the driver deciding what's the easiest place to bring it, closest place, then it's going to save them money. And I think our projection of 1 million gallons a year is going to be very accurate. problem with Ishpeming is their plant's obviously a lot smaller, so they don't have the capacity we have. And then they get a big influx on Monday and Tuesday, and they have to turn haulers away because they can only take so much.
They get a big influx of septic hauling, you mean, on Monday and Tuesday, or just their flow rate?
Yeah, he said it's usually Monday and Tuesday where they have this huge influx, and they finally, they just have to say, enough, we can't take anymore. And they don't, this 2 million has been great for them as far as revenue. It brought in $280,000 to their budget, but it also affected their solids, the way they dispose of their solids up there. They compost it, and that caused them some issues. Obviously, loading their plant handled it, but treatment-wise, it was operationally wise, it was challenging.
Are you looking
So
at
they would rather not take that much. What's
Are
that?
you looking at 14 cents a gallon or whatever it was?
Yep, that's what Ishpeming's charging, and they look at what it costs to treat the septage, and then at the same time, their O&M, and then replacement costs in the future. So they have that all built in, and they charge 14 cents. I know Houghton charges 12 cents a gallon. Munising charges 12 cents a gallon. But I think if we're at 14 cents a gallon, I think a driver is going to want to take it here rather than drive all the way to Munising and back.
Yep.
To save 2 cents a gallon.
Yep.
But, and that's something that we can look at as we get up and running. If we feel we need to be more competitive, we can do that. I have no idea on porta potty waste, how much of that we would get. And obviously we're going to aggressively try to go after the grease trap waste. For right now, we would start the fee schedule at 14 cents a gallon for that. But we'll see where it takes us, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Mark, what size trucks do when these guys drop a load off, how many gallons are they doing at a time?
They're anywhere from, I think, 2,000 to 4,000 gallons. They're not the really big giant ones out there. But, Ishpeming, I think there's days where they were taking 20,000 gallons plus a day, which for us could be challenging. I think our tanks are designed to be, well, initially they were going to be 10,000 gallons, but we had to make the building a little bit bigger. So the wet wells are going to be a little bit bigger also, I think 11,000. So storage capacity will have the capacity to take in 22,000 gallons. And as we're taking that in, we can be pumping it into the digester also at the same time. Any porta potty waste, we were just going to take that, pass it through our pre-treatment system, and put it directly up to the head of the plant. The grease would be really challenging because if we take a load of grease in, we're going to put it in one of the wet wells, and then we're going to turn the heat on to that wet well so it liquefies the grease, so we're able to pump it into the digester. But I really want to see how much extra gas we're going to get from that when that does happen. And like I said, a lot of Ishpeming does not take any of the grease. I talked to some of the haulers, and what they're doing is they take it, grease trap waste, and they blend it with septage, and they're hauling it all the way up to Houghton. So down here, also North Country Disposal has gotten into the game. And I know in 2020, they hauled 500,000 gallons of septage. So it's going to be interesting to see how the dynamics change from the 2019 report to the 2020 report. But I know that North Country Disposal, my conversations with them, they get called all the time to pump out grease trap interceptors, and they don't have a place to bring it, so they just don't do it. So if they know they have a place to do it, they would actively go out and do that service. And then we would happily take it.
Mark, if each load's about 3,000 gallons, it's an average, and you're going to get about 350 loads a year, right? Spread over like 3 or 4 months or 5 months, I would guess. What's the maximum capacity that you guys can handle in a day? Are these scheduled deliveries, or are they more or less they just stop by?
That's going to be a learning game for us. My intention, as long as we can handle it, would be to set these drivers up with a pass card, and they can just come in to the plant. We don't even have to be here. and they can swipe their card on the system.
Yep.
They will dump their material. It'll all be, it will be a flow meter on there. And then it'll just go into our automated billing system.
Have you thought
And
about,
then they can,
have you-
but if obviously, if we're getting so much septage coming down here that we're not able to process it fast enough, then we're gonna have to, take steps to control it.
so you have you said a 22,000 gallon receiving vessel or tank?
I believe, yeah, I believe. Dan, do you remember what Alan said? Because initially they were 10,000 gallon tanks. And then we had to make the septage receiving building just a little bit bigger. And by doing that, it was going to increase the size of the wet wells.
Well, the presentation he gave today, I think he listed them as 10,000, but that's probably a
Yeah, but
nominal volume.
yeah, but that changed. Yeah, that changed at our last meeting when he brought up.
I guess
making
one of the
building a
questions
little
I
bit
have
bigger.
is this, you said these people are just going to stop by with their credit card and just, or whatever.
That's kind of what, yeah, we want to make it as simple as possible.
Are they,
But we're gonna have to closely monitor it. If that's not
Right.
possible, you're gonna have to come here during working hours. And then we're gonna have to assess whether, we can take this much more or we can't take it.
is it
Honestly,
truly-
I'm not gonna know until we get up and running.
just curiosity, how is the system, is it, when somebody drops the load off, is it immediately pumped into the digesters, or is it held for a while, or?
Well, what it's gonna do is it's gonna flow by gravity through
Okay.
a flow meter
Okay.
into that Huber screen, the Septage screen, or the other one, Envirex or whatever it was. I can't even think of the name right off the top of my head. Anyways, it'll pass through that system. That system will take out any of the material that tends to get into septic tanks or porta potty waste or anything like that. It'll go down into one of the two wet wells based on the flow level or the level in those wet wells. And then there's going to be two pumps, one for each wet well. And if there's material in there, we're going to be feeding that continuously into the digester.
So these guys, you're not gonna allow discharge while nobody's at the plant, are you, or are you?
Well, early on, no. Early on, when we first get this thing up and running, I envision that we're gonna require them to come here during working hours. And, we're gonna get the bugs out of the system, see how quickly we can pump this material into the digesters. And it's gonna be a learning experience. And based off of that, we see the kind of demand we have. If we can set it up that they can come after hours and make it as convenient as possible for the drivers, that's what we would like to do. But again, that's going to be a learning experience. We're going to have a camera right on the unloading station. The unloading station is designed that if there's a spill, it's going to go into a manhole right down into one of the wet wells.
I guess the question I have is, if these guys are, let's say, drop their loads off, at some point we've got 10 loads coming in, that's more than we can handle, say, in a day, unless we are actually pumping it while we're receiving it.
Right.
If you got
That's
10
something we're
loads,
going to have to,
that's like 30,000 gallons, say.
right. So we're going to have to, in the time before we get that, if we go over 22,000 gallons, let's say, we're going to have to either cut it off or, hopefully by that time, 4 or 5 hours have gone by and we've processed, whatever we can process. We're not even sure, until we get it up and running, we're not going to know all those things.
You don't know the process rate of how many gallons a minute you can handle, or?
Off the top of my head, no. I know
Okay.
Donnie has looked at that and I can ask them for that question. But again,
I think it's
every
important
treatment plant
because
is different.
your loads aren't going to be consistent throughout the year. It's going to be, you're going to have peak times, and that's what we have to design for. So,
Right.
okay, that's all I had.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to, or Dan, are you done with the operations report?
I am, but I just had a quick comment regarding Harold's question about peak loading. Mark, I hadn't thought about the fact that, we've got to pump a certain amount of primary and TAS sludge every day. And this will be on top of that. And those peak days, I'm not worried about washing out the digesters, the detention time is always gonna be fine, but we're gonna potentially have to transfer, 2 or 3 times as much out of the primary digesters a day.
We're absolutely gonna have to transfer more for sure. Whatever goes in pretty much, well, yeah, pretty much what goes in is gonna have to come out.
Right, so it's just gonna be an operational change that we'll have to get used to, I guess.
Exactly. We're gonna be running the press more often.
Well, that's the whole point, right? We'll have another one that we can run and that'll be someone's job for that day.
And it's cheaper to dispose of the cake than it is the liquid.
Right.
But
Okay, I know.
yeah, operationally, this is gonna be a complete 180 for, well, not 180, but it's gonna be another challenge for operating the plant. You know, just like when we upgraded in 2008, we went from RBCs to activated sludge, which is far more complicated, and
Mhm.
we had our growing pains, no question about it. We had
Right.
several violations,
You'll just.
and over time, we learned how to operate the plant, and I think we'll be successful with this too. But
Okay.
there will be some growing pains, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just hadn't thought about that, and I'm sure Donahue has put that in their calculations. You know what? It'd be nice.
We
to see
have,
our maximum, given our typical normal sludge volume we feed those things per day, what our maximum septage additions we could do. You know, what.
yeah, we can talk to Donahue on that.
Just
But
the
that was
rate.
something early on when we talked about this whole project. You know, would our digesters be able to handle it? And then operationally, would we be able to handle it?
Right.
Find that in the winter, there's no change to what you're doing right now, probably. I mean, I can't see them
Right.
hauling in the winter.
Very little. I can't imagine much either, Harold.
So all this septage and well, maybe grease could be hauled in the winter. I'm not sure, but anyways, all this flow is going to happen in the summer months. So there's going to
Right.
be some peaks.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's going to be a challenge for us. And I think this is why we kind of shied away from septage all along. You know, it was for that reason. Well, one, because we just didn't have a way to take it in and properly pre-screen it ahead of time in a good place to dump it. You know, but to help pay for this solids handling project, you know we're going to get good revenue from this. It's going to be a challenge operationally, yes, but you know, I think we got a pretty good staff here, and I think we're up to the challenge.
Do you think there's going to be requirements for additional staff in the future when this goes on?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I think this is going to actually improve staff time. Currently, the way our current belt filter press is, we have to basically have somebody babysitting it for 8 hours. There's just not a lot of pads, you know, where the cake comes off the machine, especially in the wintertime. Someone's got to be there and scooping that stuff out and putting into our storage area. The way it's designed, it's going to come off the press and it's going to be several days, you know, 3 or 4 days before we have to go in there and actually move the material. We're going to have a camera on it, and almost every treatment plant I've been to that had the belt filter press, they don't have somebody sitting at the press all the time tweaking it. We should be able to get it up and running and walk away from it, and then just have the operator monitor it through the camera system. So
Main thing
I
is
think
to
it's
get
going to
your-
free up. We're going to be running it more often, but that person's not going to be tied to it for 8 hours.
I hate to interrupt you, but Brad, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I just realized I hadn't seen your hat move in about 6 minutes. It's
No,
okay.
I'm good. I'm good.
Sorry.
Just listening.
That's not really Brad. That's just a picture of him.
Yeah, I thought I shouldn't, and I thought he's just looking at his paper like we all do, but I thought I would ask.
Thank you.
Mark, when do you expect this to hit? Next summer?
No, I don't think we're going to be able, you know, depending on construction, by the time the loan closes and we can officially start to break ground, we're going to be getting into late fall. So I don't know if the contractors want to, you know, is going to want to go crazy all winter. I got a feeling it's going to go more into spring, and construction will transition through the following summer. We might be up and running in the fall. Would
The
be about
fall
as
of
soon as a year from this
2022.
fall.
The fall of
Yeah.
2022. Okay.
That's kind of what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Okay,
So we might have a quick, a month or two where we might get some material and then we'll have some time to digest it and see how we're gonna handle it.
no pun
See where it takes
intended,
us.
right, digest it.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any questions.
Can we move on to new business?
I have nothing.
Okay. And we will move on to public comment. I don't see public, so let's go to board member comment. Ms. Brum.
The PFAS report is kind of skim this month. The thing that came out of the state that caught my eye is they've now been officially monitoring PFAS in Michigan for a solid year. And as they continue the monitoring, they expect their database to yield statistically significant results. But essentially what they're celebrating this month is that they've had a year of taking samples. And nothing more on the virus in the sense that the money for testing in this part of the country has gone away, but the need to be able to detect different variants of the virus continues. So that's my entire comment.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hayes, how about you?
I had a question for the plant staff. Is it possible to get this oxygenated system for the chlorine contact tank installed this summer or this spring instead of waiting for the solids waste project to continue on?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, we could bid it out separately, but I think the cost, it'd be a lot more expensive. Or
what kind of cost?
And I think,
what
I think it was like 70,000 gallons or 70,000 gallons. Sorry, I'm talking gallons too much. $70,000 was their estimate.
Can you explain to me what?
And that would entail doing some piping work, running a line out to the contact tanks, putting some headers in.
Is that
going down to some diffusers in the tank itself?
Yep. Okay. Is that going to be tied to the blower room, or is that from the pipe coming out of the blower room?
It's going to come out of the boiler room. Actually, they might be tying in the RAS room below the boiler room. Can't remember if they're tying.
So there's also a header.
It's in the plans.
What's that?
It's in the plans. It's in one of the rooms. It's inside the building, and it's going to go down into the RAS room.
Okay.
And then out the corner wall, and then kind of a straight shot to the contact tanks.
Okay.
And initially we were looking at putting a DO analyzer and putting a lot of control on there. But when we started to get the budget was getting pretty high, the estimate, that was one of the things we cut.
I think just a manual valve.
Yeah.
Open it up.
And my only concern was, okay, we just want to make sure that if we open that valve to the max, we're not going to supply too much air and damage the aerators.
Right.
So we've covered that.
Right. But I mean, there's no reason to have a control system operating it. So, I mean, manually would be best.
Exactly. We're only going to turn it on when, we start seeing the DO getting lower.
Mm-hmm.
When we know we're really loading the plant up to, we'd go ahead and turn it on then. But this should solve our most frequent violation.
So we're going to have probably, it's possible to have another violation this spring.
It's possible. Yeah. I think last year.
It's just a letter, right? That's all we have to do is just write a letter for a violation.
Well, yeah, I got to report it. There's several steps involved, but yeah, I got to explain it and why it happened and what we're doing to take care of it.
Okay.
And the state is well aware that there's nothing operationally that we can really do. I mean, we really try to manage. The biggest thing for us in the springtime when we know the river's going to be up and we're not getting that cascade is we really try to manage our side streams because of that loading. It's a huge load on the DO, and we know that's going to be a problem. But there's days where we have to bring the side streams back. We don't have a choice.
Yep.
And that's where we've had, and we've been pretty successful. When we first started off, we had more violations and we've gotten better and better and better operationally. But we're pretty much at our limit. There's not much more we can do. We need an engineered fix for that.
Right.
But the state is aware that, you know, we're looking at fixing the problem, and I think they're okay with, you know, having it as part of this project plan.
Right.
Or as tied to it anyways.
Sounds good.
All right, and I've got no comment. So now we're looking for some adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
This is Harold Hayes. I'll second it.
All right. And we'll, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Randy.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Randy.
Yep.